Tonight, we want to talk hockey. In fact, we want to talk about growing the game. So let me give a little bit of intro. Let me have my colleagues introduce themselves, and then we'll open it up. So it's some of you may think it's a little strange. It's Black History Month, and we decided to do an event on hockey. Not exactly what usually comes to mind when you think an event for Black History Month. And that's exactly why we're doing this, because the world is changing. It has changed, and we want to see it change even more. And so I'll just give the background sketch. So I grew up in the 70s, loved sports. I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me playing hockey in the 1970s. And that's probably part of, along with finances, why I didn't ever play the game as a young person. But of course, things have changed. And some evidence of that change occurred in August of 2022, when in back-to-back weeks, Union College hired 2 new outstanding assistant coaches who have had a tremendous impact on their players who I talk to. I love seeing them at the games. And they both happen to be African-Americans, Lennie Childs and Olivia Soares. So at the time, there were only 5 African-American coaches in all of college hockey. And 2 of them were at Union. And so it got us thinking, Lennie, Olivia, others, what's their story? Who else can we get involved in the conversation to talk about how it is that the kids of today have opportunities that maybe the kids of the past didn't have, and how the kids of tomorrow will have even more. So that's the idea of this group. And again, I really appreciate my colleagues coming together for this conversation. So excellent, thanks. Olivia, do you have anything to add about sort of challenges, opportunities?
I think Lennie mentioned just the impact people can have, and I think about my family and just the support from them. And I think my mom, I had a conversation with her in the car after one of my games and had a player exchange some words with me and just some racial slurs. And I kind of had a conversation with her about, I never understood that certain players saw that and then paid attention to that I was one of few players of color where I was growing up and playing. And so she just kind of mentioned to me, and the way she framed it still sticks with me today, is just, she said, you know, when you leave the rink and when you walk through the lobby of a rink, everybody will be able to tell who you were in your gear. Like, everybody's going to know what number you were. They're going to know what team you were on if they were watching that game, because you look different. Not everybody looks like you. And she said, so when you walk out of the rink, make sure you played a game that you were proud of. And I loved it. It pushed me. It still drives me. I think that was something that I will always appreciate her for shaping it like that, because I was always proud. I was always proud to walk out of the rink. I was always proud to walk into a rink. I loved the game, and I think anybody who plays it loves it, but that should be enough right there. And so I wanted to show my passion for it and show that it was a space for me and anybody who looked like me. And so I think the people and just those small experiences, and talk about those little sparks that you can have with younger players, or just sparks for us as well. But that was definitely one for me, and definitely pushed me and drives me now to use my platform and have these conversations.
Generally, I mean, are there positive examples? I mean, how do you do that? Olivia, Lennie, your coaches, now here at Union, is that something I assume you have explicit conversations with your players about, you're looking out for each other and so forth?
Yeah, I think it's just building that environment. And certainly I can think back to my college experience. I was surrounded by a team who we loved each other for exactly who we were, and we were going to play for the person next to us and the person before us and everybody who wore the jersey after us. And I think just creating that environment, and I think that's certainly a culture drive within the team. But I think as a coach, outside of the X's and O's and outside of wins and losses, if you can create an environment where your players are sitting across from you their senior year or after they're graduated and can say, I've learned a ton as a person and as an athlete, and I loved the environment I was in. I was pushed, I was educated, I grew a ton. I think that is where the true success comes from. Of course, winning along the way is fun and exciting, and that's the goal. But I think if you can sit across from players and have those conversations after, that's a huge win. And so I think, again, it's a culture piece. It's kind of creating that environment. Lennie, I don't know if you have anything to add on to there that I missed.
Yeah, it was perfect, Liv. And I think also, I'm definitely a glass half full type of guy. And as Jeff's doing a phenomenal job, like working on the grassroots, I do want to say it is coming. I'm out recruiting, and it used to be where when I was playing the game, we had a couple Black players on my team. I was fortunate in that, but there was only a few here and there. There's more color on the ice at the youth hockey levels than I've seen before. And that really gets me really excited. It used to be, who's that? Now it's like, whoa, that's awesome, right? So to you guys, like parents walking in saying, hey, I'm the only parent, like there's a couple parents out there now. And I think that's what you want to see. And I think that will in turn help grow the game, because as those players develop through the system and the structure, they become now junior hockey players. And those junior hockey players, because they have support of family members and people around and all the great organizations that we've been accustomed to, move them on to college. And now they go through that college career, and what Liv just talked about, having the opportunity to do that, but also if there is some adversity, not to be taken back from that, but moved forward because of the regulations and also the ability of the commissions to make sure they move on. And then that gets into coaching, where now that we have these players who've gone through that grassroots that Jeff's doing to move into coaches. So I feel like, there are more things to come. But I'm super excited because there are some steps being taken, and I see it right before my own eyes.
Excellent. Thanks, Guy. Let's pick up from where Guy was.
Okay.
Challenges, keys to success, Lennie?
Yeah. So for me, it's people in this game, and thinking back to that first time I walked in with my hockey bag that I had no idea what to do with in Silver Spring, Maryland. I walked in, and first person I met was Nelson Burton, who ended up being my coach for the longest time. Nelson was from Nova Scotia, 6'4", big mitts. He was what hockey was, played for the Washington Capitals. And Lennie, how are you? Welcome. It's good to see you. Gave me a big hug. I felt welcomed right away. And, being that you could have those kind of uncomfortable feelings walking into a place that you don't see a lot of your color, to have someone who is hockey at that point, come in and introduce you, you don't feel like you're doing anything wrong. You feel like you're in the right place. Right. And I definitely feel that from a challenge standpoint, my family did not come from a lot of money. And for us, it definitely was a family decision going all in on these hockey trips. And I was an only child, so thankfully I was. If I had brothers, we wouldn't eat probably. But it was one of those things that was a full family decision, and is a challenge for a lot of families that don't have the financial means to be able to propel a kid forward. And I was fortunate to have grandparents and parents that really helped me.
So Meredith, tell us a little more about Mosaic Hockey Collective, if you would. What is it? What do you do?
Yeah, so again, Mosaic Hockey Collective, we have about 80 players of color, boys and girls, right here in Minnesota and some surrounding areas. Lennie, we have some people from Wisconsin, so we're proud about that. And what we do is really we've understood that our players want development opportunities. They want to know how they can be better at hockey, whatever level that is, and how can we provide resources to bridge that gap. We know that probably 75%, if not 80% of the players in our association or in our organization are first generation hockey players. So they don't have that generational knowledge to know what to be doing in the off season, know how to make the teams, know that, to play summer hockey, you got to try out in, September. Generationally, we just don't know that. So it is just how to, bridge those resources and build a strong community so that we can grow the game.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah, the microaggressions are real. I mean, my daughter has been a part of, ice arenas that do more than just hockey. They, have a community center, and my daughter would walk in with her hockey bag and her hockey stick, and people would still give her directions to the community center for a birthday party. And she's like, no, I'm here to play hockey. When my daughter was U10, I just know when you talk about microaggressions, it's refereeing the game. And that was really hard for her because people would basically have to seriously hurt my daughter for there to be penalties called. She would just accidentally, tap them. And she's an aggressive player. I'm not going to lie. Anybody that's watching this knows that she is an aggressive player, but that's her game and that's her skill. And she's doing it in the best way she can. And, she would just get kicked out of games for having 3 penalties and penalties all the time. And when she was a U10 player, she said, Mom, did you see that ref? He's a player of color. Maybe I won't get as many penalties in this game. And for her to recognize that and see that, it just made me realize how important representation is, not only as players, but in all aspects of hockey.
And what have been some of the challenges? Anybody want to start off?
I'll take a stab at that one. I think, sports, I think in general, enable you to build a skill set. And I think you learn the most from failures and losing. And how do you come back from a loss? When things are going well and you're winning Stanley Cups and all the, what have you, things are well. But how do you deal with adversity? And I think a lot of the folks on this call have had to deal with adversity just because they played a game they loved, and often, and sometimes their ancestry, to put it politely, could be questioned. An N-word here and there, and you can take that several ways. As a youngster, I didn't take it well, and a lot of time I lashed out, got some match penalties. I was kicking people probably when I shouldn't have. But as I grew as a player and got a little better along the way, I used that to motivate me, because I was no good to my team sitting in the penalty box or being suspended for 30 days. So then you transfer, if you take a look at that, contrast that with life, right? We all hope to play the game forever, but what do you acquire? You acquire a skill set that teaches you how to deal, number one, with adversity, how to work and collaborate, be a good teammate, in a work ethic. I think those are three traits that are key, that most hockey players will possess and will serve them well throughout life. And as President Harris shared, I've had one of the joys of my life over the since 2013 is serving on the Union College Board of Trustees. It's been a tremendous honor. It affords me the opportunity to interact with a lot of good people, and I'm blessed for that. But yes, President Harris is right. I'm always good for an acronym, and I want to try to leave everyone with a little bit of something. And really, the title of the panel is Growing the Game, Expanding Hockey's Horizons. Some of these may be aspirational, but I think it's within the realm, Jeff, as you speak about what the NHL is trying to do from the top down and the bottom up. And Meredith, you set a good example for all of us to grow games. We are ambassadors of the game. No matter where you are, you touch hockey, you're an ambassador. So here's my acronym, and it's PUCks. Our partners can start right at the top. The NHL, the OHL, the Western Hockey League, East Coast Hockey League, Mosaic Hockey, right? Ice Hockey in Harlem, all partners in building this beautiful game, right? To grow this sport. So as we continue on, we need to be undaunted. We all know, having played this game or been involved in it for quite a while, that they're going to be challenging, and there'll be challenges ahead, but that hasn't stopped us now, and it won't stop us now. It hadn't stopped us before, and it won't stop us now. I beg your pardon. Catalyst. We need catalysts. We are catalysts and ambassadors inside the game, but also to pick up the pace of the type of growth that Jeff is talking about. We need external catalysts, folks that maybe don't have the affinity for the game, right? Get them involved. That way we'll pick up the pace, and you'll start to see more black and brown, and the palette across the hockey arenas across the country and the world will change in quick order. And these catalysts can be mentors that can help you along the way, not only in hockey, but in life. This one's tough, the keen part. Keen that we will not waver on being committed to growing the game, okay? Right? We cannot waver. Hockey players, we are not quitters. We will grind it out to the very end, so there's no time left on that clock. We got to be unwavering in this commitment to grow the game. The benefits that accrue are enormous. I alluded to some of them. Being, in my career path, not making it to the NHL, but wow, who would ever thought coming out of Union College, I would help finance some of the arenas around in my day job as an investment banker, financing arenas and convention centers around the countries and hotels. So hockey afforded me that opportunity. And lastly, sponsors and supporters. Economics, we've touched on it a little bit. If you look at the major sports across the gamut, soccer, golf, football, basketball, tennis, what save hockey, golf, and tennis, all those other sports, you will notice that the complexion of these sports has changed over time, right? I live in the South, I live in Georgia. Think about it. Black players could not play in the SEC until Bear Bryant decided, hey, I want to win, right? So make it about the economics, as Jeff, as the NHL is doing. Make it about the economics. This is good for business, right? And something that strikes me to eliminate that as a barrier, set up endowments, encourage those in your respective cities to start an endowment in each of their cities to support hockey, to grow the game. That's the economic side of it. So ultimately, there are ways, obviously, something of that nature is very aspirational. So at the risk of using up too much time, I'll just reiterate, let's all be pucks, be partners, be undaunted, be catalysts, be keen, and let's seek sponsors and supporters. And thank you.
So Jeff, tell me that. So again, for you, hockey, sort of, how do you come to the game?
Yeah, so it's so interesting, and I love hearing the stories from a player's perspective. And my love for hockey actually came from watching the love develop in my son. And so this was going back 9 years ago. I was overseeing community development for the Brooklyn Nets. And during that particular time period, the New York Islanders were in transition and they were playing out of Barclays Center. My son was 3, 4 at the time, and we had our first Learn to Skate program. And I was going for work. We're in the heart of Brooklyn, bringing a sport to a community that wasn't familiar with it. And I had my son with me. I threw him out there on the ice just because I needed to keep him busy. Full transparency. I needed to keep him busy while I could handle some work over here. And I look over and he's, of course, ankle breaking and he's falling and he's getting up, he's falling, he's getting up. An hour passes. I'm expecting him to come off the ice crying. I look up, he's still out there. 2 hours go by. Now, anybody, skaters, 2 hours on the ice is a long time. And finally, he comes off the ice and he's smiling from ear to ear. And he's like, Dad, I love this. I love this. Can I keep playing? Can I keep skating? And so for me, like I mentioned, I'm working in hockey, college football player, stepbrother who played 22 years in the NBA. My dad played in the NFL. Like, we don't know anything about hockey, but I've seen this love and I'm seeing this passion for my son. And coincidentally, I find myself now working with the Islanders and overseeing community, trying to bridge that gap of hockey within a very, minority community in Brooklyn. And here we are 2 years into it, 3 years into it. Fast forward, I look up and I'm happy to say my son is a tier 1 AAA hockey player. He actually just won the Boston CCM tournament yesterday. We just got back from Boston, and his love for the game and his passion for it has sparked not only me, because it's now my profession of what I'm able to do with growing the game, but I see what it can do for a family. I see that if you just give a child an opportunity and you see the doors that it opens for anyone that's given that opportunity to try it, you can't help but love it. And you can't help but respect the discipline, the determination, all of the, incremental assets that comes along with playing the game. And I'm hooked, man. And I love when I can have those conversations with family members who may not be as familiar with it, but then they can see the success that's happening on the other end of the spectrum. And then to be able to do it as a profession, it's a blessing, truly a blessing.
What are we doing to make the game more diverse? I mean, what's the NHL doing? I wonder what we're doing in college hockey. We have college coaches. We've heard Meredith some of the things they're doing, and what are we doing to make it easier for more people and a more diverse group of people to fall in love with this game?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a very multi-pronged approach, right? And I can be here for the next hour talking about it, but we have to look at it from a holistic approach, from a top-down, bottoms-up approach. And when we talk about diversity of our game, we have to have an internal, introspective look and say, how diverse are our organizations, right? We can't preach to our youth hockey organization and say, you need to be more diverse when, you know, less than 5% of our organizations are diverse, right? We need to have clear representation within that. So we've taken a lot of intentional steps from establishing various councils and committees to prioritize how we're hiring, how we're recruiting, how we're marketing, how we're promoting, who we're partnering up within our game, so that from a business side of it, we are equally as diverse. And then when we think about it from that second tier down, we have to also look at the entire spine of the hockey ecosystem. You know, what type of partnerships are we putting in place with our Players Association, with our Coaches Association, with our Alumni Association, and making sure that they are a part of this journey and a part of this movement with us. Because to Meredith's point about her daughter seeing, you know, a Black official or an official of color, right? That's such an anomaly right now that if we don't have that in place, then we are skipping a step when we talk about the diversity of a game. And then lastly, you know, we really have to think about what are those barriers, you know, for entry? What are those barriers for access? We talk about the expense until we're blue in the face, but when I think about the excuses of expenses, I actually take offense to that as well, because essentially what we're trying to say is that people of color don't have the means to engage in the sport. We are just not choosing to engage in the sport because we haven't made it as culturally available or culturally relevant for us to invest our money into this sport. So we have to think about it from that landscape as well. And then I think it all goes back to representation within our game and how we market it. I'm actually here at Prudential Center right now because tonight is the New Jersey Devils celebration of Black hockey history. And so I have my family here. This was an organization that I was a part of for 6 years. So I'm coming back to support. You know, they're doing some amazing things that are fairly new when we talk about game presentation, right? And how that conversation, that, you know, normalization of, you know, telling stories around the Colored Hockey League, talking about the Black history within the Devils organization, talking about the investment in Black-owned businesses. This organization is really, you know, setting a best practice for that. And it's really it really comes to us as a league making that a priority, you know, and trying to replicate and scale that across all 32 of our teams. So we look at it from, you know, to not be long-winded, from a top-down, bottoms-up approach, right? We want to make sure from our executives, we're as diverse and as healthy and intentional with our hiring and our practices, all the way down to our grassroots level, and making sure that we're creating those access points for families to not have an excuse or not feel connected to the game.
And it's a great way to wrap. I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I thank all of you for everything you do to make hockey a sport that can be loved by even more people. I wish everyone a wonderful evening. Thanks again to everyone. It's been a lot of fun, and to have a great night.